Elite Facts presents
Spot the Difference number 8.
29.
Hello everybody and welcome back to a new edition of Spot the Difference. In this video, we'll be looking at 30 more Spot the Difference puzzles. Feel free to pause the video at any time so you can take a closer look. We're going to show you two images side by side. They'll stay up temporarily and then we'll move on to the answers. There are 5 differences in each puzzle. Score yourself 1 point for each correct difference you spot. Grab a pencil and paper or keep a tally in your head. We've got 30 rounds in total, so we better get started. Good luck! All of a sudden, it makes sense as to why stormtroopers have terrible aim. They don't take their job seriously. Can you spot the differences? So first up, you can see in the background that Obi-Wan's lightsaber is a slightly different color as it's changed from blue to green. Next up, you can see in the top left corner that the clip holding the picture up is now missing. They must be using the Force to hold it up instead. The third thing you'll notice is that the stormtrooper furthest to the left is holding 3 fingers up instead of 2. Next, you can see the stormtrooper is missing the little bit of shine detail on his armor. And finally, the stormtrooper furthest to the right has a different color than the rest of them. That's just unprofessional.
28.
Next up, we take a small nostalgic trip in the Mystery Machine to a cosmic crossover between The Flash and Scooby-Doo. First thing you'll probably notice is that the ketchup bottle up front is no longer ketchup. Honestly, that hippie Shaggy and his talking dog will eat any old garbage, won't they? Next up, you can see that Scooby's tag is much larger than in the original image. Next, you can see that the title has had a minor change and is now missing the dash between Scooby and Doo. Next, you can see that the Flash looks absolutely insane with some added eye detail. And finally, you can see the motion details around Shaggy's head are now missing. Did you catch them all?
27.
Time for a Spot the Difference with our friends from Phineas and Ferb. Can you spot them all? First, you can see that Phineas has suddenly grown hair. That is some straight up black magic right there. You'll also notice that he also now has an extra eyelash. Next, you can see that Candace has suddenly grown a thumbnail. Oh man, the idea that she was missing a thumbnail to begin with is just a painful thought. Losing a full nail hurts. Next, you can see that Candace is missing the shine detail on her eye. And finally, you can see that the strand of hair on Candace is much longer than in the original picture. Did you get them all?
26.
Now it's time to take a trip back to the world of Doctor Who with this Spot the Difference focusing on Clara Oswald. Can you find them all? The first and probably most obvious difference is the color lipstick she's wearing. Next, you can see that the badge on her collar is now missing. You'll also notice that she's missing one of her rings on her hand. Near her hand, you can also see that a flower on her dress is missing too. And finally, you can see that the flower pattern on the front of her dress is much bigger.
25.
Next up, we have our favorite pizza-loving crime fighters, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Can you spot the differences in this one? First thing you'll notice is that Michelangelo has traded in his orange mask for a pink mask. Next, you can see that he's now smiling. He must really like that mask. You can also see that Raphael's teeth are different now. Next, you can see Leonardo's katana is missing detail on the handle. And finally, you can see that the Nickelodeon sign has had a bit of a cosmetic change.
24.
We've hit the jackpot. It's a treasure chest filled with gold. Can you spot all the differences? The first difference you might notice right off the bat is that the frame isn't quite as sturdy anymore. Next, you can see that towards the left side of the chest there's now an extra coin there. Next, you can see that there's a leaf missing off the tree branch towards the right-hand side of the picture. You'll also notice that the detail of one of the coins is now missing. This is obviously just straight up counterfeit. And finally, you can see that a little bit of detail of wood has been removed from the lid of the chest.
23,
Okay, now we're turning the nostalgia dial up to 11. Who remembers wacky races? Anyway, can you spot the differences here? The first difference you may notice is that Dick Dastardly's hat has less stripes on it. You can also see that he is now missing a pocket on his coat. Next, you can see that Muttley is missing a tooth, probably due to a lack of dental hygiene. Next, you can see that the A in Wacky has the gap filled in. And finally, you can see that Dick Dastardly's coat is missing a button. Did you catch them all?
22,
Next up, we have this pretty damn awesome looking image of a castle that looks like it's straight out of the medieval period. Although we failed history in school, so we could be wrong. Can you spot the differences? The first difference you may notice is that one of the flags hanging on the side of the castle is now half blue and half red. Next, you can see that in the changed image, there's another person walking up the stairs following the other two knights. Next, you'll notice that the mountain at the side there is much larger. The fourth thing you may have seen is that the space under the stairs has been filled in. And finally, you can see that the castle itself is now missing a window.
21,
Oh no, not Zack Snyder. Okay, let's forget the Batman vs. Superman movie for a minute and look at this cool piece of promotional art and see if you can spot any differences. Well, first up, you can see someone has finally fixed Batman's ears on his cowl. How it looked in Batman vs. Superman is very off-putting. Next, you can see that Aquaman's trident, which is more of a fork than a trident as it has 5 spikes instead of 3. Sorry, I had to get that out of my system. Anyway, it now has an extra spike, making it a total of 6 spikes. Next, you can see that the Flash's logo is much larger now. You'll also notice that Wonder Woman has a much longer skirt on. And finally, Superman's hair looks more like the comics, with it now having a flick. I have a feeling that the person who created this particular Spot the Difference really wanted to fix Zack Snyder's vision of the characters.
20,
Take a look at this image of the Music Meister from Batman, the Brave and the Bold, and see if you can spot all the differences. The first difference you might notice is that the feather on his hat has subtly been flipped over. Next thing you'll notice is that he now has a mullet rather than his normal haircut. Business up front, party in the back. Next, you can see his shoulder is missing the lighting detail that the original image had. You can also see that his bow tie knot is a different color now. And finally, you can see that he's been taking his dentist's advice and looking after his teeth more in the edited image.
19,
Nerd alert! That popular television show Big Bang Theory is in the house. The first difference you may notice is that his belt buckle is completely different. The next thing you can see is that the guy in the middle is missing his glasses. That same guy in the middle also lost his thumb. Again, our overactive imagination leads us to believe that this missing appendage has something to do with organized crime. Next, you can see that the guy on the far left has a much more defined fringe than he does in the original image. And finally, you can see the bottom of the woman's skirt is a different color. Did you spot them all?
18,
Good old Super Mario. How can you hate that guy? Can you spot all the differences? The first thing you may notice is that the hammer to the right of Mario has moved to the center of the picture. Next thing you'll notice is that the question block is upside down. The next difference you can see is that the flower in the background is now a mushroom. You can also see that the red detail of Mario's hat is now missing. And finally, you can see that the ghost to the right of Mario is now frowning rather than smiling. Did you catch them all?
17,
Oh God, no. Not the minions. Anything but those things. The first thing you can see in this one is that the minion on the right of the image now has a bottom set of teeth. Next, you can see that the minion in the center has a higher strap. You'll also notice that the minion on the far left has a logo on his chest now. You can see the minion on the far right now has hair on his head. And finally, you can see that the thing the middle minion is holding no longer has a hole on the end of it.
16,
Next up, we have famed British mentalist and illusionist Darren Brown. Can you spot all the differences? Time to mess with you now. The first difference you can see is that his vest is much higher than in the original picture. You can also see that his jacket is missing its pocket tissue. And you can see that the number 4 on the clock in the background is different, as is the number 8 on the clock. And finally, the number 10 on the clock is also different. Did you catch them all?
15,
Next, we're beaming you up to a Star Trek themed Spot the Difference. First, you can see that Mr. Spock's jumper is a different color than in the original image. How illogical. Next, you can see a crossover ready to happen in the window in the background. And check out McCoy's jumper. It's missing the emblem. Damn it, Jim. Oh my. Sulu is missing his eyebrows. And quite frankly, it's pretty unsettling. And finally, you can see that the lights on the control panel in the background are different. Did you catch them all?
14,
Next, we have a good old game of hand egg. American football. Can you spot the differences? The first thing you'll notice right off the bat, sorry, wrong sport, is that he's holding a soccer ball rather than a good old American pigskin. Next, you can see the number on his jersey is different. You'll also notice that the logo on his helmet is different. Next, you can see that he's wearing different color leggings. And finally, you can see that the player who's shoulder tackling him is wearing a long sleeve jersey. Did you catch them all?
13,
Oh boy, we're not looking forward to the comments on this one. Can you spot the differences? The first thing you may notice is that he no longer looks like a Cheeto. Next, you can see that he has a new friend on his shoulder. And you can see that the color of his tie has changed. I wonder if that was made in America. You can also see that the American flag pin has moved from his right lapel to his left. And finally, you can see that one of the stars on the flag in the background is missing. Did you catch them all?
12,
Next up, we have the Queen of England. The first difference you can see is that she now has a feather in her hat. Next, you can see that she's now wearing matching green gloves. You can also see that Prince Philip is now missing a few of his medals. Next, you can see that the Queen has an extra button on her shirt. And finally, you'll notice that she's missing a button on her sleeve. The royal tailor may want to start looking for a new job. Did you catch them all?
11,
Who's up for a game of hopscotch? Anybody? No? Nobody? All right, well, I didn't want to play anyway. Here's another Spot the Difference. The first thing you'll notice is that the border of the chalk extends out more than the original. Next, you can see that the border is also missing a line on the box that the number 5 is in. Next, you can see that the number 1 is out of place. Next thing you'll notice is that the number 6 is now the number 9. And finally, you can see that the sock the person is wearing is now missing the logo. Did you catch them all?
10,
Can't go wrong with The Walking Dead. Well, the first season at least. Anyway, can you spot all the differences? The first thing you'll notice is that the O is now completely black. Next, you can see that the I on inside is now an uppercase I. Hey, grammar and punctuation still matters in the apocalypse. Next, you can see that the O on open is leaking far more than the original. Next, you'll see that zombies are now growing extra fingers. Okay, they're really straying away from the comic now. And finally, you can see that another pair of hands are trying to pry open the bottom of the door. Did you spot them all?
9.
It's alive! It's alive! Can you spot all the differences on good old Frankenstein's monster? The first thing you can see is that the bolt in Frankie's shoulder is sticking out more. Next, you can see Dr. Frankenstein forgot to give him a belly button. You can also see that he now has an upper set of pearly white teeth. Next, you can see that there's a bolt sticking out of the side of his head now. And finally, you can see that his forearm has red veins now. So, did you spot them all that time?
8.
Next up, we have a regular old bouncy castle. Fun. Can you spot the differences? The first you can see is that the tie the clown is wearing has more spots on it now. Next, you can see that the warning symbol on the bottom of the castle is now removing the band icon. Next, you can see that the balloons at the right pillar are missing an added balloon. Next, you can see that one of the trash cans has changed color in the background. And finally, you'll see that the roof in the background has an extra window. Were you able to spot them all?
7.
Is this show still running? Okay, fair enough. Here's a fairly odd parents picture. Can you spot all the differences? The first thing you can see is that Cosmo has a much larger crown now. Next, you can see that he's now missing his wings. You'll also notice that the dash between Cosmo and Con has been removed. Next, you can see that other ear on the other side of his head. And finally, the badge now says located in scenic in Timmy's bath. Yeah, I think we're done with this one. Moving on.
6.
Next up, we have Danny Phantom. Can you spot all the differences again? The first and most obvious change is his hair color. Next, you can see that the person on the far left has a different shirt now. You can also see that Danny's boot is missing the pattern at the top of it. Next, you can see that the hold on the doorway in the back is now missing on the left side of the picture. And finally, you can see that the girl at the right in the picture is now wearing her necklace. Did you spot them all?
5.
Next up, we have another Yu-Gi-Oh picture. See if you can spot all the differences in this one. The first thing you can see is that the guy on the right in the picture has different color hair now. Next, you can see that Yugi has another strand of hair going up from the center of his fringe. Next, you can see that the nose shading is pointing to the right rather than the left. And you can also see that the guy on the left has a different pattern on his coat. And finally, you can see that Yugi is missing the belt straps on his right arm. So, were you able to spot them all?
4.
Next, we have a bag of carrots. Yeah, that's it. Just a regular old bag of carrot sticks. The first difference you'll notice is that the mascot has different color hair. Next, you can see that the label on the bottom says no junk rather than no junk promise. Well, it better not because they're carrot sticks. Next, you can see that the Goodies logo now has a face where the two O's are. Next, you can see that someone misspelled carrot. Someone in the design department is losing their job. And finally, you can see that there are more leaves where the cartoon carrot is. Nah, what's up, Doc? Did you spot them all?
3.
You know, I always thought Elmo was a bit of a shady character. The first difference you'll notice on this one is that his leg all of a sudden has an outline. It's witchcraft. Next, you can see that the book he's holding has changed from blue to green. It's witchcraft, I tell you. Next, you can see that his nose is now a different color. Witchcraft. See, I knew he was evil. Look at those damn eyebrows. And finally, you can see that he's named himself Elmo now, so he can closely relate himself to Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street. We knew he was evil. We just knew it.
2,
I always thought Gorilla Grodd was a fun villain, just so much different than what we're used to. Anyway, can you spot the differences? First, you can see that the skull he's holding is missing an eye hole. That's not how anatomy works. Next, you can see that the red book in the background is now missing a stripe on the spine. Next, you may have noticed that his eyes are now glowing red. And the fourth difference that you can see is that the golden frame in the background is much taller than in the original picture. And finally, you can see that the control panel in the background has a different button pattern. Did you catch them all that time?
1,
And finally, oh my God, who lets a room get this messy? Anyway, can you spot all the differences here? The first thing you can see is that the bear's bow tie and feet are now purple rather than red. Next, you can see that the handle on the set of drawers is now missing. Next, you'll notice that the cup on the set of drawers has a Diet Coke label now. Next up, you'll see that the blue object on the floor is missing. And finally, you can see the glasses case on the set of drawers has another case on top of it now. And that's it. Well, that's the end of this episode of Spot the Difference. Once again, add up your scores and let us know how well you did in the comments below. Thanks for spotting by.
Don't forget to like us and subscribe for more elite facts.